Reach out, right now, and lay your hand flat on the nearest table. Press down on it. Press as hard as you can. Lean your weight into it. Your hand stops. The surface holds. You could put your whole body on it and it would not let you sink even a hair. So I want to ask you something so simple it sounds hardly worth asking. Why does your hand stop? I can already hear the answer. Because the table is solid. Because it is hard and firm and it is there, and your hand cannot go where solid wood already sits. That is a perfectly fine answer for getting through a Tuesday afternoon. But I am going to take that little word, solid, and turn it over in my hands, because underneath it is one of the most powerful forces in all of nature. It is sitting inside your table this very moment. It is in your chair. It is in the cup you drank from this morning, in the floorboards holding you up, in your own skin and bone. And almost no one ever notices it, because it spends every single second of its life in hiding. Come along. Let us go and hunt it down. Start with that word, solid. What do we even mean by it? We mean you cannot push your finger through it. We mean it keeps its shape. We mean it feels firm and continuous, like one smooth, unbroken sheet of stuff. The top of the table looks like a single slab, doesn't it? No gaps, no holes, just wood, all the way through. Hold that picture carefully in your mind, because before we are done I am going to take it away from you completely, and you will never look at a tabletop the same way again. Everything in front of you is built out of atoms, tiny pieces, far too small for any eye to see, stacked and bonded together to make the wood, the cup, the floor, your hand. The air you are pulling into your lungs as I speak is atoms. The water you drink is atoms. You yourself are a vast, walking, talking cathedral of atoms, something like 7 billion of them, all arranged just so. If I were allowed to keep only one fact about the world and burn all the rest, I think I would keep this one. Everything is made of atoms. Little particles, never still, jiggling and bouncing forever, even in things that look perfectly motionless. That quiet table is not quiet at all. Down at the small scale it is a riot, every atom trembling in place. And the warmer the thing, the harder they tremble. Heat, the warmth you feel from a cup of tea, is nothing but the speed of that jiggling. And these restless little atoms do one more thing you must remember. They pull gently toward one another when they are a small distance apart, and they push hard away from one another the instant you try to crowd them too close. They attract at a distance, and they repel when squeezed. That single sentence, once you truly feel it, explains more of the ordinary world than almost anything else I know. Here is the first real shock. An atom is almost entirely empty, almost entirely nothing. Down in the very center sits a nucleus, a minuscule hard knot, where nearly all of the atom's weight is packed, and around it, very far out, the electrons. How far out? Let me build you a picture you can stand inside. Suppose I swell a single atom up to a tremendous size, until its nucleus, there in the middle, is about as big as a pea. Where would the electrons be? Not beside the pea, not across the table. They would be drifting and flickering somewhere out past the very last row of seats in a great stadium, hundreds of paces away. And the entire space in between, all of it, from the pea to those distant seats, is empty. No stuff. Nothing at all. So your solid, continuous, unbroken tabletop is, up close, almost pure emptiness. A few tiny specks of matter with oceans of nothing between them. And here is a fact to keep you awake tonight. If you could somehow press all that emptiness out of a person, push every nucleus together until they touched, a whole human being would shrink to a speck you could lose under your fingernail. Do it for everyone alive at once, and the entire human race would collapse into a single lump, roughly the size of a sugar cube. A sugar cube that would weigh as much as all of humanity put together, because every ounce of that weight was hiding in the nuclei the whole time. Everything else, all the rest of what you think of as you, is empty space. Now set those two facts side by side and feel how badly they seem to argue with each other. Your hand is almost entirely empty space. The table is almost entirely empty space. So when you bring two great clouds of mostly nothing together, why on earth do they not just slide straight through one another? Think about how easily empty things pass through empty things. On a warm evening, two swarms of midges can drift through each other above a pond, thousands of them crossing in both directions, and not one of them collides. Smoke from two fires mingles without the slightest resistance. A bucketful of mist offers your hand no push at all. So if your hand is mostly gaps, and the wood is mostly gaps, your fingers ought to glide down into that tabletop like a spoon sinking into loose flour. Down through the wood, out the other side, no resistance, nothing to stop you. But that is not what happens. Your hand slams to a halt on the surface. It stops hard, hard enough to carry your entire body. Two clouds of near nothing meet, and one of them absolutely refuses to let the other pass. So something must be there in the emptiness. Not stuff, because there is barely any stuff. Something else. Some force reaching out across the gaps, standing guard, saying no closer. And there is such a force. To find it, we have to talk about those electrons, the specks way out on the rim of every atom. Each electron carries a property we call electric charge. Charge is a strange and wonderful thing, and people stumbled onto it thousands of years ago without the faintest idea what they had found. The old Greeks noticed that if you rub a piece of amber, that golden fossil resin, against fur, the amber will afterward pull little bits of straw and dust toward it across a small gap, as if by magic. They had no explanation, they simply gave it a name. Their word for amber was electron. And so, 100 lifetimes later, we still call this whole business electricity after a glowing yellow stone that picks up dust. You have felt this force yourself many times without ever naming it. Comb your hair briskly on a dry day, and the comb will lift a thin strand upward against gravity from across a gap. Rub a balloon on a wool sweater and you can stick it to the wall, where it clings for an hour with nothing visible holding it. Scuff across a thick carpet in dry weather, reach for a metal doorknob, and just before you touch it, snap, a tiny spark leaps the gap and bites your finger. That little sting is the very force we are hunting, briefly let off its leash. And the grandest show of all is a thunderstorm, where the same force built up inside the clouds suddenly tears across the sky in a bolt of lightning, a river of fire wider than your arm and hotter than the surface of the sun. Hold all of that in the back of your mind. We will come back to the spark and the lightning, because they are the secret, quietly showing its hand. There are two flavors of this charge, and long ago, for no deep reason at all, we labeled one of them negative and the other positive. The electrons out on the edges of the atom carry negative charge, and the rule that runs everything we are about to see is short enough to write on a fingernail. Like charges push apart, opposite charges pull together. Two negatives shove each other away. A negative and a positive rush toward each other. And the push or the pull grows fiercely stronger the closer the two charges come. People long ago measured this with delicate twisting balances, and they found the rule is sharp. Halve the distance, and the force does not merely double. It leaps up fourfold. Bring two like charges nearer and nearer, and the shove between them climbs faster and faster the smaller the gap gets. Now we can finally see what really happens when you press your hand on the wood. The surface of your skin is covered in atoms, and every one of those atoms wears a coat of electrons on its outside. Negative charge. The surface of the table is the same. Electrons all along its skin, also negative. As you push your hand down, the electrons on your fingers come sweeping toward the electrons on the wood, and like charges push apart, so they begin to shove, softly while they are still far apart, then harder, then ferociously hard, as the gap shrinks toward nothing. Your hand is not stopped by wood. Your hand is stopped by this push. The electrons in your skin never get to meet the electrons in the table. They come close. They feel that wall of force rising up in front of them, and they are held off, hovering just short. Let me say the thing this leads to, because it is one of the strangest true facts I know, and once you have heard it, you cannot unhear it. You have never touched anything in your life. Not once. Not the table. Not this book. Not the face of anyone you have ever loved. Every time you believe you are touching something, what is actually happening is that the electrons in your skin are getting close to the electrons in that something, and this force is holding the two apart by a tiny gap, and the pressure of that standoff is the only thing your nerves ever report. When you shake a person's hand, your charges and their charges crowd together. The force keeps you a whisker apart, and that gentle, firm resistance is the entire sensation. When a hammer strikes a nail, the steel never touches the iron. The blow you hear, the clang, is the charges shaking. You sit in your chair, and you are not resting on the chair. You are floating, ever so slightly above it, held up on a cushion of pure force. Touch, the most solid and trustworthy of all your senses, turns out to be the feeling of this hidden force refusing to let one cloud of charge pass through another. Remember what I told you to hold on to. Atoms attract a little when they are a small distance apart, but repel hard when squeezed. This is the secret of why solid things behave the way they do, and it is worth slowing down for. Picture every atom joined to its neighbors by tiny, fantastically stiff springs, each one made of this electric force. Push the atoms closer than they like to sit, and the springs push straight back, harder and harder, refusing to be crushed. That is why you cannot squash a block of steel in your fist. But pull the atoms farther apart than they like, and now the same springs haul them back together, resisting, refusing to let go. That is why it takes real effort to stretch a rubber band, or to snap a wooden stick in two. The atoms do not want to be pulled apart any more than they want to be crushed together. They have a favorite distance, and they fight to hold it. This is also why a glass shatters when it falls. The blow shoves whole rows of atoms past the distance their springs can stand. The grip between them tears all at once along a line, and the glass flies into pieces. It is why a steel spring snaps back the instant you release it, why a diamond is hard and butter is soft, why honey is thick and water runs thin. Every property of every material you have ever handled is just the bookkeeping of how strongly these electric springs pull, and at what distance in that particular arrangement of atoms. One force, 1,000 different feelings in your hand. There is something almost clever about the way this force holds you up. Set a light teacup on the table, and the electrons in the surface are pushed together just a touch, just enough, and they push back exactly hard enough to hold the cup, and not one bit harder. Set a heavy book down instead, and the surface yields the tiniest bit more. The electrons crowd a little closer. The push climbs, and it keeps climbing until it precisely matches the weight bearing down. The harder the world leans on the table, the harder the table leans back, all on its own, without anyone arranging it, because crowding the charges closer always cranks up the force. The table is not a passive lump of wood. It is a self-adjusting machine, forever measuring exactly how hard it is being pushed, and pushing back with exactly that much, instant by instant, on every surface you touch. By now you might be picturing this force as something modest. It only has to hold up a teacup after all. So let me measure it against the one force everybody already takes seriously. Gravity. Gravity is what pins you to the ground and pulls a dropped plate to the floor. Gravity holds the moon in its great circle and keeps the planets swinging around the sun. It feels enormous. It rules the whole sky. And here is a lovely thing about these two forces. They follow the very same law of distance. Gravity gets weaker by the square of the distance, and so does electricity. Halve the gap, and both forces leap up fourfold. They march to the same tune. So when we line them up against each other, the comparison is honest and clean. It does not matter how far apart we hold our particles. The ratio between the two forces stays the same. So take two electrons, two of those tiny specks of charge. They pull on each other by gravity, because each one carries a whisper of mass. And they push on each other by electricity, because each one carries charge. Two forces. the very same pair of particles. Which one wins, and by how much? The contest is not close. It is not in the same county. It is not in the same world. The electric push between two electrons overpowers their gravitational pull by an amount I can scarcely fit in my mouth. Write the number as a 4, and then start writing zeros after it, and do not stop at 3, like 1,000, and do not stop at 9, like 1,000,000,000. Write 42 zeros. That is how many times stronger the electric force is than gravity between those two little particles. A 4, with 42 zeros marching behind it. Let that sink all the way in. The force you have ignored your entire life, the one you swear you cannot feel, the one folded up quietly in your teacup, is more powerful than gravity by a 4 with 42 zeros after it. Gravity, the great ruler of the heavens, is by comparison the faintest breath of a force. So I will ask you the question that has been waiting this whole time. If the electric force is that mighty, and every object is stuffed full of charged particles, then where is all that power? Why is the world so calm? Why can I lift this cup with 2 soft fingers when every atom inside it carries the strongest force in the room? This is the riddle hiding at the heart of every ordinary thing. Locked inside your table is a force stronger than gravity by 42 zeros, and yet the table simply sits there. It does not lunge at you. It does not hurl your hand across the room. It rests, calm as a cat asleep in the sun, a force that colossal, and from the outside, nothing at all. How can that be? The answer is the most graceful trick nature has ever played, and it has been standing in plain view the entire time. Remember, there are 2 kinds of charge, not one. Negative, on the electrons, and positive, sitting deep in the nucleus, carried by little particles we call protons. Opposite charges pull together. And here is the trick. In every ordinary atom, the count is exact. The same number of negative electrons on the outside as positive protons in the core. The minus perfectly balances the plus. So from even a short distance away, the atom shows the world nothing. Every electron's push is answered by a proton's pull. The 2 cancel. The ferocious force is still in there, every bit as strong as ever, but it is locked in a war with itself, and the 2 armies are matched so exactly that all an outsider can see is dead, smooth calm. Picture a tug of war, but a monstrous one. On one end of the rope, 10,000 giants heaving with everything they have. On the other end, 10,000 more giants, every bit as strong, heaving back. The rope does not move. A traveler strolling past would swear nothing was happening, that the rope was just lying there in the grass, asleep. But walk up and lay 1 finger on it. It is rigid as iron, humming, screaming with strain, every fiber stretched to its limit. That rope is your table. That rope is your hand. That is every solid thing you have ever owned. Titanic forces, hauling and shoving, balanced down to a whisker, so that the world outside sees only stillness, while underneath it everything is locked in furious, perfect tension. And the numbers in this tug of war are almost beyond imagining. In a single glass of water, there are more charged particles than there are stars in the sky, more than grains of sand on every beach on earth. And the positive and the negative match each other so nearly perfectly that the whole glass shows you nothing. No push, no pull, just water. That is the precision we are talking about. Not balanced like a pair of kitchen scales. Balanced like an ocean weighed against an ocean, drop for drop. And the balance is so jealously guarded that even the faintest crack in it produces something dramatic. Go back to that little spark off the doorknob. When you scuffed across the carpet, you rubbed a few electrons loose and carried them with you, so your body held just a few too many. A whisper of imbalance. And the force that built up from that whisper was enough to leap across a gap of air and snap at your finger. A thundercloud does the very same thing on a giant scale. As it churns, it separates its charges, pushing a little extra negative one way and a little extra positive the other. The cloud is barely out of balance at all, in the grand scheme. And the result is a bolt of lightning, hotter than the surface of the sun, ripping across miles of sky. That is what a tiny crack in the balance buys you. Now hold your breath, because I am about to show you what happens when the crack is not so tiny. Let us do an experiment in our heads, the way I love to. Picture two people, two perfectly ordinary people, standing about an arm's length apart in a quiet room. Now I am going to reach in and spoil the balance, just slightly. To each person, I will add 1% more electrons than they have protons. Only 1%. The tiniest little surplus of negative charge in each of them. Both now carry a bit of extra negative, and like charges push apart, so these two people will feel a force shoving them away from each other. The question is, how strong is that shove? I can guess what you are thinking. 1% on two people in a room. A gentle nudge, perhaps. A faint breeze between them. So let me walk you up the staircase, step by step. And you tell me when to stop. Is the force strong enough to lift a heavy book off the floor? Oh, far stronger than that. Strong enough to lift a grown man? A loaded truck? A great ship at sea, riding low with its cargo? Keep climbing. Strong enough to lift an entire mountain, to take some towering peak by its roots and hold it up in the air? Still, that is not big enough. The force between those two people, each one just 1% out of balance, standing one arm's length apart, would be enough to lift a weight equal to the whole Earth. The entire planet, every ocean, every mountain range, every city and forest, and all the rock beneath, the complete weight of the world, held up by the push between two people who are off by a single percent. That is the force living inside you right now. That is what is folded up, silent and patient, in your hand and in the table it rests on. Not some small thing that happens to be small. A planet-lifting giant, kept perfectly, exquisitely, flawlessly tame by a balance so fine that 1 part in 100 slipping out of true would be enough to throw worlds around. Once you have truly seen this, you cannot stop seeing it. That same hidden force, balanced and forever rebalancing, is quietly doing almost everything around you that gravity is not. Why is iron hard and clay soft, water thin and tar thick, glass brittle and leather tough, when in the end they are all just atoms? Because of how this electric force is arranged among them, how tightly each charge grips its neighbors, and at what distance. Every texture your fingers have ever known is the signature of this one force, written in a different hand each time. Rub your two palms together quickly and feel the warmth rise. Feel the drag. That dragging is the electrons on the skin of one hand snagging and tugging at the electrons on the skin of the other, millions upon millions of tiny grips, catching and letting go. Friction is this force. The bite of your shoe on the pavement so you do not slip, the hold of a knot, the cling of glue, the grip of a nail driven into a plank. Every one of them is this same force working along a surface. And the warmth your hands give off as you rub, that heat is the jiggling of the atoms speeding up, stirred by the very same force. When wood catches fire, when iron slowly rusts, when dough rises into bread, when anything in the world turns from one substance into another, what is truly going on is that electrons are releasing their grip on one arrangement and snapping into a new one. The whole of chemistry, every reaction in every test tube, and every reaction inside every living cell of your body is electrons shifting their hold under this electric force. The food you ate this morning is being taken apart and rebuilt by it. When you decide to lift your arm, a signal races down a nerve and your muscle tightens, and both the signal and the tightening are, at the very bottom, this same force pushing charges from place to place. You raise your arm using the very force that is hiding in the table. And there is one more, the most beautiful of them all. Light. A man named Maxwell worked it out with pen and paper, and what he found is this. When charges are shaken back and forth, they fling out a ripple in the electric force, and that ripple, racing across even the emptiest space, is light itself. The same force that stops your hand at the surface of the table is the force that lets your eyes see the table at all. The warmth of the sun on your cheek is energy that crossed 93 million miles of empty void as a wave in this single force, and finally jostled the charges in your skin. You are bathed in this thing. You are built out of it. You feel it in every waking instant of your life, and you call it by 100 different names, never once suspecting they are all the same force, wearing different clothes. So let me leave you with the strangest turn in the whole story, the part I find hardest to stop thinking about. We live among two great forces. Electricity, which we have chased all through this hour, is staggeringly strong, a 4 with 42 zeros stronger than gravity. And gravity, which feels so grand and commanding, is by raw strength almost nothing at all. By every honest measure, electricity ought to be the master of the universe, and gravity a mere footnote at the bottom of the page. And yet lift your eyes to the night sky. The moon in its orbit, the planets on their long, slow rounds, the sun, the stars, the whole vast wheeling of the galaxies, all of it is governed by gravity, the weakling. How can the feeble force run the cosmos while the mighty one hides inside a teacup? Because gravity has no opposite. There is no negative weight to cancel the positive. Every speck of matter pulls on every other speck, always, only ever pulling, never pushing away. And across the immense reaches of space, those tiny tugs add and never cancel, until they are enough to swing moons and kindle stars. But electricity, the giant, undoes itself nearly everywhere it goes. Plus finds minus, the two fall silent, and the colossus vanishes into perfect balance. The strong force spends its whole life in hiding, cancelled down to nothing. The weak force, with nothing to cancel it, quietly inherits the heavens. So the next time you set your cup upon the table and it does not fall through, I want you to feel what is truly holding it up. Not the wood. A truce. A standoff between armies of charge so vast they could lift the earth, locked against each other so perfectly that all you feel is a cool, smooth, ordinary surface beneath your hand. The most powerful thing you will ever touch is something you can never feel, because it spends its entire existence canceling itself out, just so that you can have a quiet and solid world to live in. So here is what I would like from you. Look around the room you are sitting in. Pick out one plain, ordinary object, and tell me which hidden force you believe is locked up inside it, and why you think so.